So the program for the methods is nothing but I think customer was that, right? Now, so if a method is written, among these methods, which method can be declared as static, or what is the eligibility for a static method, that we have to see. So first, what you have to write? Static method is the concept. Now you have to understand that if you want to declare a method as static, the method should not use any instance variable. Then that particular method can be declared as static. Means if any method doesn't have any instance variable used inside it, that can be declared as static, because static depends on class name, it does not depend on object, right? So that's the first point we have seen, static methods. So what is it? A method which doesn't contain any instance variable can be used or declared as static, right? So now we'll see an example for this program. I have a class, we can see some method as first or class first. Just want to write a method known as void show. If you want to have parameters, you can have this as parameters or without parameters, right? And just I'm having system dot out dot println, what you can say, hello static method. So that is doesn't have any instance variables. I'm just declaring it as class first, right? And here I'm writing one more class, like class, it's a static method, right? Public static void main string args. So here first, what is the first thing we do? We create object. So first f equals new first. But usually we create object for a class when we have instance variables or instance methods. But in this scenario, am I having any instance variables or instance methods? No. Then for this particular class, first we don't have to create object. Means if a class doesn't have any instance variable or instance method, then object creation is not required. And if it is having a static method, that static method depends on class name. So that class name first dot show can be called directly, means show can be called directly. Okay, I'm just saving it as method dot java. So here programs static method dot java, java c space static method dot java, java space static method, right? So what's getting printed here? Hello static method. That's a simple scenario, right? So this is an example of static method. Now we have few questions, like here, can we write or use instance variables inside the instance method? So for an instance variable, is it applicable to use inside an instance method or not? So as both depends on object, we can use them directly, right? There is no restriction. For a method which is declared as static, if you consider, this static depends on class name first, not the object. So here object is not required for this first class. That's why I'm not creating it. If you have any other instance variables or methods, then obviously object is required. For example, void display. What I'm saying, system dot out dot println. Hello instance method. Hello instance method, right? So what is that you can say? First dot show is a static method call. But can you call the display by using the class name? If you try to call this thing like first dot display, what's happening here? Java C space hello dot Java. Okay. Next Java space hello. Is it hello? No, right? It's static method. So Java C space static method dot Java. So what's it saying? Here you can't write first dot display, right? Because display is not a static method. Then what you need now? For this we need first f equals to new first f dot display. So what I have done, I have created an object and I'm calling that method display because it's an instance method. Next, I'm not creating any object and directly calling the first dot show because show is a static method and static depends on class name. Okay, so is it clear what I'm trying to say? So now my question will be, can we write a can we write or use instance variables inside the static method or not? So what's the answer would be? Like if I want to use an instance variable, consider I'm having int a equals to 10. So what is a? A is declared inside a class, outside a method, it's an instance method. And I'm just trying to print a equals to plus a, right? So here if I just compile this thing, what will happen? I'm using an instance variable directly inside a static method, right? We'll get error saying that a non-static, nothing but instance can also be called as what? Non-static variable cannot be referenced from a static context. Means the static things can only be referred from a static method or a static block. You can't refer any non-static member inside a static method. So here non-static, it's nothing but an instance variable, can't be referenced from a static context, right? What is the reason behind this? If you see the Jvm memory architecture, we have like 5 memory blocks, right? So in that, what is the first memory block you can say? Here the first memory block is like method area. Means the variables whatever we are using, first we'll allocate the memory for the static variable, static block and static method. When the class is loaded from secondary memory to primary memory by using class loader, right? అప్పుడు static variable కి directly memory allocate అవుతుంది. So here whatever you execute, it executes in the method area. Now for this particular program, if I say show is a static method, it will get executed in first by the particular method area. For this method area, is it A available? Like A is an instance variable. When the memory will get allocated for the instance variable? Once you have completed the method area, then only the heap area will get executed. So here, what will happen? For this movement of instance, like when you are executing the show method, A is not available because after the completion of show, if you create the memory of first, then the memory will get allocated. They will get created after the execution of show. So here A is not available in show. That is the reason we can't use instance variables inside the static method, because static methods or variables or the block will get executed first, then you can execute the instance variable, block or a method. The memory allocation is done in an order wise. We have seen the same. So here the method area first, then the heap area. Okay, so that's the most important scenario. What is that answer you can say? We can't use or write instance variable inside the static method, as the memory is allocated for method area first, and then memory is allocated for heap area. So whatever the memory is getting allocated, it will be done for method area first, then the heap area. In the heap, instance only get executed. So those instances are not available in the method area. So this is the most important thing you have to understand. In any scenario, you can't use non-static members inside a static method or block. Understood? So here non-static is nothing but A. But if it is static, you can use it. There is no issue. Like here, if you have static, the same program, if I compile again, it will get executed. Then Java space static method. So what's happening here? You're getting the output also, right? So hello static method A is 10 and hello instance method, right? So this is the scenario for an instance and static. We're seeing the combination, like we have some combinations of two things. One is instance variable is there, and other thing is static. We have instance method. So what I am trying to do, can I use this instance variables inside the instance methods? Yes, you can do it. It's fine. Next, can I use this instance variable inside static method? No, because in static methods only static things are allowed, not the other things. Now, can I use static variable inside the instance method? That's the next question. Like here, if I take the same A and also print it in the instance method, A equals to plus A. For this moment of display, here if you compile and run, it's getting executed, right? Because that A, if it is static, already the copy will be created, that A is 10. When you load the class, automatically that copy will get created, A equals to 10. If you want, you can use it in the show as it is available, and if you want, you can use it in the display, because when you are executing display method, the copy or the location of A is available, right? So that is the reason static variables or static related things can be used directly inside the instance method or a block. There is no restriction, right? But whereas when you try to use an instance variable inside a static method, then only you have a problem. If you take a static variable and use it in the instance method also, there is no issue. If you see the different combinations, we understand that only the instance things are not supported by static, whereas the static variables or method or block are supported by the instance. There is no restriction. Okay, so this is a different concept. You'll get used to this concept when you practice different programs. Okay, so for this instance of the program, what's happening? That static method can only access static variables. We cannot access instance inside a static. It's not possible at all. Okay, that's the scenario. So that's the end of the topic. We've just seen that combinations of variables and methods which can be used in which particular scenario, right? And any doubts in this concept? So just move on to next concept known as polymorphism. So what is polymorphism actually? is a single word. So that single word which is of two parts means poly is nothing but many. Morphism is nothing but forms by properties by states. Poly means many, morphism means forms, properties by states. Right? And this polymorphism is classified into two types. Into two types. Okay? So here first is nothing but method overloading and second is nothing but method overriding. This method overloading can also be known as static by compile time polymorphism. This method overriding can also be known as dynamic by runtime polymorphism. So what is it? There are two things we have to remember here, right? What is static and what is dynamic? Static is nothing but which doesn't change every time. Dynamic means it changes from time to time. There are two things you can say, right? So now, why these particular concepts are required for us? What is the advantage they have? To consider just having this concept. I'll just give a particular scenario. If you see in C language, if I write void sum int x comma int y, in the same way void sum float x comma float y. So here this particular program, if you compile inside a C language, a C compiler, it will give error saying that function sum is declared multiple times, a multiple declaration of sum. So what do you understand that C programming language doesn't allow you to write the functions with same name. So you might have a question like what are the particular requirements to do that? Obviously we can write instead of some add or any other name also we can give it. What is the advantage you have when you write the same name again and again? Suppose consider in a project we have 50 modules. Then we need to write 50 methods. Now if you apply this rule like different names are mandatory as we have seen just now, all the 50 names must be different and the readability of the code will be getting complex. Yes or no? Whereas for the 50 modules, I want to write few models as the same name, which is not possible in C language, right? That's the reason they introduced a concept known as overloading to reduce the complexity of the coding where the method name can be written same. These methods can be written same. There is no restriction on a condition that different types of parameters must be given, like int and float. These are different types of parameters, or int x comma float x comma int y. Or you have to change the order. You shouldn't match with the order, like int float int, right? That is a scenario you have to follow. And now one more last requirement will be like method name can be same, but the number must be different. Number in the sense, here two parameters are there. I'll remove that. You can say this is 0 parameter, this is 2 parameters. This is empty. Empty means what? 0. This is 2. Fine. You can write this thing. So I'll just do that. I'll remove the float y. So what's happening here? Again the number is different. Here it's 0, it's 1. The number of parameters are different, right? So if I take here int x comma int y, then again if I write here int x, again it is also different. Like here in the first method you have two particular parameters, whereas in the second method you have only one parameter, right? So now one more scenario you can take, like int x, int y and int z. Again here it's two parameters, here we are differentiating with three. The simply scenario is nothing but these methods whatever you are writing can be written same, like sum and sum, but when you having the parameters, these type of parameters must be different. Here method name can be written same with different types of parameters, or order of parameters, or number of parameters, as the numbers are getting different, right? So this is the requirement of method overloading. So what's the definition you can say? And for this example, for the 50 modules, 10 modules, one name. So what's happening here? For the 50 modules, you can have to write only 5 names, right? So the readability or the code complexity getting reduced when you use that method name same. But here we have one more drawback. You're writing the method name same, but we can't write the type of parameters same, right? That is the drawback of method overloading, you can say. It's mandatory to be different. If it's same, then we'll get error, right? So the next scenario is nothing but method overriding, which overcomes this drawback, where a method can be written same with same type of parameters, same order of parameters and same number of parameters. Everything can be same, but we have some rules. What are the rules of method overriding? We'll see at the time of overriding concept, right? So what we are seeing now, just method overloading, where we know that method name can be written same with different types of parameters, or order of parameters, number of parameters. So if you are well aware of this, three things will be there. Okay. So method name has different types, order and number. That's the same. And we'll see a program for this method name same with different types along with the scanner. By using a scanner only we'll see. Just if you have this thing, first I'll import java dot util dot scanner, right? So whenever you use a predefined class, we have to check whether the package is getting imported or not. Then the class, you can say as method. I'm just writing a class as method. Or if you want, you can write it as a add, because you're adding the two values, right? So you can say void sum int x comma int y. So what type of parameter it is? Like what type of method it is? It's a method. When you have void, it is without return type, and here you have two parameters, int x and int y. The same way, void sum float x comma float y. So whenever we say with parameters, the values will get transferred from main block to sub block. So here you will get the values from the main block, main method, right? So like system dot out dot println, I'll just say sum of two integers plus x plus y, the parameters to differentiate them, right? The same way, system dot out dot println sum of two float, what you can say, x plus y. And here I'm just writing one more class known as method overloading. The public static void main string args. So what's happening here? That add is a class which has two methods, which are instance methods. So we need object for add class, right? So I'll just create add x equals to new add. But I want values, right? When I call this thing like sum, if I say x dot sum, what will happen? You can't call them directly, right? Without passing any values. Method overloading dot java. Java C space method overloading dot java. What you saying? No suitable method found for sum. Either you need two float, which is not applicable. Actual and formal argument lists differ in length. The same thing it's saying for the int. You can't have zero now. Either you have to pass two parameters, here or here. So what you have to understand, you have to give two variables. So just declare int a comma b. So is it mandatory to have a comma b or xy? You have to understand the point. Whenever you declare a variable, these variables are only for storing the value or indicating the value. When I say the values are getting transferred from main block to sub block, here the variable names will not get transferred. Only the values inside the variable will get transferred. So that variables can be anything in sub block and anything in the main block. But here mostly it sees the type. If you are having here 0, it's not suitable for int or float. Means it is searching for a parameters where you have two integers or where you have two floats. So just give the scenario, like we have to create object for scanner sc equals to new scanner system dot in. So I have to give the value for a, right? Sc dot next in. So what is that a type? I know it is integer, but if someone else is trying to enter, for that reason system dot out dot println. So you can say enter two integer values. Enter two integer values. Next, the same way b equals to sc dot next int. Two values we have entered. But suppose if I am passing here a, only one parameter I have passed. If I call here, what it's saying again? Again the parameter, no suitable parameter is found. Here it is sum. It is having only one parameter. But it can't find any one parameter sum method, right? So you have to mandatorily give a comma b. So if I save, if you compile, then it's getting compiled, right? Now, if I run this thing, Java space method overloading, what's happening here? It's getting executed 10, 20. Sum of two integers is 30. Then what about float? We have written that sum of two floats also. Why here that float is not getting executed, right? So because we haven't called this sum with two float parameters. So what do you understand by that? Here when you are calling x dot sum, you are passing only two integers. So only two the integers will get executed. But if you want to execute again this particular float value, float method, you have to write system.out.println, enter two float values. So we'll say int p comma q. P is what? Float. So sc dot. So float means what? You have to declare it as float instead of int. Sc dot next int or next float for float type of method. And q equals to sc dot next float. Now you can call x dot sum of p comma q. So here when you pass p comma q, that two things will get executed. So here we have to compile. Without compiling it can't execute. So compile and again run. If I am saying 10 and 2, 12. And if I am giving 3.4 and 12.23, I am giving sum of two floats. So what do you understand here? You are giving the values, you are displaying the output. You are giving the values and you are displaying the output. Because after calling x dot sum comma a comma b, I called this particular scanner values, right? But if I write the same line at the last, here, so after the float, the sum will get executed, integer sum, right? If I compile the same thing again, and if I run the same thing, same method, right? So what's happening here? I have to enter two particular integer values, like 88 and 9. So what I'm saying is, two float values I have to enter. Again, what I'm trying to say, 6.7 and 8.5. So it will show first sum of two floats, then sum of two integers, right? So why it's happening here? Because you can see here x dot sum p comma q, two float values here given. So the first float sum will get executed, then integer sum. So it's everything depends upon your calling, not the order how you are writing it, right? Not the order how you are giving the values. Everything is depending upon this calling. When you call, then only Jvm will execute. Understood? Without this two step, only the values will be taken and no particular output will be displayed. That's another scenario you can say, right? So here this entire thing is known as method without return type and with parameters which are transferred from main block to subblock. The same thing you have to do it for again these two methods which are written inside a class. Okay, so this is the end of polymorphism. I just given one example, and the remaining two examples you can try directly yourself. Okay, so if you have any doubts you can just contact